On the morning of January 26, 2018, a chilling 911 call shattered the silence inside a small home in Virginia. The caller was 31-year-old John Phelps. His voice trembled as he told dispatchers that his wife, Lauren Phelps, wasn't breathing. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, expecting a medical emergency. Instead, they found something far more disturbing. Lauren Phelps was dead. She was only 29 years old. At first, John appeared devastated. He claimed he had no idea how this happened. According to his story, he had taken cold medicine before going to sleep. When he woke up, Lauren was unresponsive beside him. Even more shocking was his explanation for the events of the night. John claimed the medication caused him to black out completely. He said he remembered nothing. No argument, no struggle, no violence, just a blank space in his memory. To investigators, the story sounded unusual from the very beginning. Healthy young women do not simply die without explanation. As detectives began examining Lauren's body in the crime scene, they quickly noticed injuries that did not fit John's version of events. What initially appeared to be a tragic medical mystery was transforming into a homicide investigation. The husband who reported the death was now the primary focus. Detectives knew that somewhere between the 911 call and the physical evidence, the truth was hiding, and uncovering it would reveal a dark reality that no one saw coming. Before her name appeared in news headlines, Lauren Phelps was known as a loving daughter, a loyal friend, and a woman who cared deeply about the people around her. Friends describe her as kind-hearted, thoughtful, and devoted to her family. She had dreams, plans, and a future she believed she would share with her husband. To outsiders, Lauren and John appear to have a normal marriage. They attended family gatherings, shared photos, and presented an image of stability. But as investigators dug deeper into their relationship, they discovered that appearances can be misleading. Behind closed doors, the marriage had been facing serious difficulties. Friends and family later revealed that the couple had experienced tension and frequent disagreements. Some described growing strain within the relationship. Investigators learned that the marriage wasn't as happy as it seemed from the outside. While nobody expected the relationship to end in tragedy, there were signs that things were far from perfect. As detectives pieced together Lauren's final weeks, they began uncovering details that painted a more complicated picture of the couple's life together. The more they learned, the more questions emerged. Was Lauren planning a different future? Had the relationship reached a breaking point? And if so, what happened during the final hours of her life? Those questions became central to the investigation, because understanding Lauren's life meant understanding the circumstances that may have led to her death. What detectives uncovered next would place even greater doubt on the story John Phelps was telling. As investigators focused on John Phelps, one detail continued to dominate the case: his claim that cold medicine had caused him to black out. According to John, he had taken an over-the-counter medication before bed. He insisted that the drug triggered a rare reaction, leaving him unable to control his actions and unable to remember what happened afterward. It was an extraordinary explanation. John claimed he woke up with no memory of the night. He said he didn't know how Lauren died. He maintained that if he had harmed her, he did so while completely unaware of his actions. The defense would later build much of its case around this argument, but investigators were skeptical. They wanted evidence, not theories. Detectives consulted medical experts and reviewed research about sleep disorders, medication side effects, and episodes of unconscious behavior. While unusual reactions can occur, experts questioned whether the circumstances matched John's account. Prosecutors argued that the level of violence involved could not easily be explained by a medication-induced blackout. They believed the evidence suggested conscious actions rather than an uncontrollable episode. Meanwhile, John's statements continued to raise concerns. Detectives noticed inconsistencies and contradictions that made his story increasingly difficult to accept. The more they examined the facts, the weaker the blackout explanation appeared. What initially sounded like a tragic medical event was beginning to resemble something else entirely. Investigators believed Lauren's death was not the result of an accident or a rare reaction. They believed someone had intentionally taken her life. And all signs were pointing toward a man who claimed he remembered nothing to in homicide investigations. Physical evidence often becomes the most reliable witness. It cannot forget, It cannot lie. And in Lauren Phelps' case, the evidence told a story very different from the one her husband described. Medical examiners documented injuries that suggested a violent encounter had taken place. Prosecutors argued that these injuries were inconsistent with an accidental act or a brief unconscious episode. Detectives carefully reconstructed the timeline of Lauren's final hours. They compared forensic findings with John's statements and searched for any detail that could support his version of events. Instead, they found more reasons to doubt him. Certain elements of his story changed over time. Other details failed to match the physical evidence collected from the scene. Investigators believed these discrepancies were significant. As the case moved forward, prosecutors built an argument centered on intent and accountability. They claimed the evidence showed that Lauren's death was the result of deliberate violence. Defense attorneys continued to point toward the possibility of a medication-related blackout, but prosecutors insisted that explanations simply didn't fit the facts. For Lauren's family, each new revelation was heartbreaking. The woman they loved was gone, and the person accused of causing her death was the man she had trusted most. The investigation had now reached a critical stage. Detectives were confident they understood what happened. The remaining challenge would be proving it in court. Soon, a jury would hear the evidence and decide whether John's explanation was believable or whether Lauren's death was something far more sinister. When the trial began, both sides prepared for a battle that would determine John Phelps' future. The courtroom became the place where competing versions of the same night would be examined in detail. The defense argued that John suffered a medication-induced blackout. They presented expert testimony discussing unusual reactions to medication and the possibility that a person could act without conscious awareness. According to the defense, John had no intent to harm Lauren because he wasn't fully aware of what he was doing. Prosecutors rejected that explanation. They argued that the physical evidence, medical findings, and inconsistencies in John's statements painted a very different picture. They believed Lauren's death was intentional and that the blackout story was an attempt to avoid responsibility. Jurors listened carefully as experts from both sides presented their opinions. They reviewed evidence, heard testimony, and examined the events leading up to Lauren's death. Throughout the trial, Lauren's family sat through painful details about the loss of someone they loved deeply. The emotional weight of the case was impossible to ignore. After considering all the evidence, the jury reached a verdict. They rejected the blackout defense. John Phelps was found guilty of murdering his wife. For prosecutors, the decision confirmed what they believed the evidence had shown from the beginning. For Lauren's family, it brought a measured justice, though nothing could undo the tragedy. A young woman with her entire future ahead of her was gone forever. The legal battle was over, but the impact of Lauren's death would continue to be felt for years to come. Today, the story of Lauren Phelps remains one of the most unsettling true crime cases in recent memory. Not because of a mystery that was never solved, but because of the shocking betrayal at the center of it. Lauren was more than a victim. She was a daughter, a friend, and a woman whose life mattered deeply to the people who knew her. Those closest to her remember her kindness, her compassion, and the positive impact she had on others. Yet her story also serves as a reminder that the truth behind closed doors is often hidden from public view. What began as a frantic 911 call evolved into a complex murder investigation that challenged a highly unusual defense. The claim of a cold medicine blackout attracted national attention, but investigators never lost sight of the evidence. Through careful examination, they uncovered a reality far different from the story initially presented. For Lauren's family, the verdict provided accountability, but it could never replace what was lost. Their grief remains, even as the case has faded from headlines. Years later, people continue discussing the circumstances surrounding Lauren's death, the controversial defense, and the evidence that ultimately convinced a jury. But beyond the courtroom arguments lies the most important truth of all. Lauren Phelps was a real person whose life was cut tragically short. Her story is not simply about crime. It is about lost justice and a determination to uncover the truth. And because that truth was revealed, Lauren's voice continues to be heard long after her life was taken.